Yeah, I'm really excited to see many old friends of CESAC today. And we'd like to thank you for your continued support to CESAC. And for our new friends, CESAC stands for Chinese American Engineers and Scientists Association of Southern California. We are a nonprofit organization founded in 1962.
Our mission is to serve as a platform to enrich the competence of Chinese American engineers and scientists through technical conference and workshop, to showcase their accomplishment, to broaden their career perspective through global and local networking, and to protect their interests and rights through organizational efforts. In the next few hours, we are going to have the Entrepreneurship Innovation Forum and the Technical Symposium.
At our Entrepreneurship and Innovation Forum, we've invited seasoned investors and entrepreneurs to share their knowledge and advice for investors and entrepreneurs in Southern California. There will be 2 panel discussions on the outlook of Southern California ecosystem and innovations in the healthcare industry.
Then in the technical symposium, 3 CESAC professors and experts will share their pioneering research and their pioneering techniques, which will significantly impact our lab in near future.
Yes, we have a very exciting daytime program. So without further ado, please join me in welcoming the speakers of the first panel. Mr. Zhang Shen, the founder and CEO of American Landing Center. I see some people very excited about our first panel. So Mr. Zhang Shen is the CEO and founder of American Landing Center. And also we have Mr. Zhen Wang, the CEO of Technology Credits and co-founder of Cheese. Personally, I'm amazed by how John and Jen are so successful in investing in companies and funding companies, and they're truly serial and parallel entrepreneurs, in my opinion. So I'm very excited for what they will share with us today. So now without further ado, let's welcome our speakers, and the moderator is Yu Ma, the Director of Clinical Research and Data Science at Cognitive Leap. Let's welcome them to give us a panel discussion on the outlook of Southern California startup ecosystem and advice for entrepreneurs and investors. Welcome.
Good afternoon, and we are really honored to have Jen and John to join us in our first panel. So getting started, can we have both of you to have a brief introduction about yourself and the mission of your companies?
Thank you. It's a great honor to be here today. I don't think I have met most of you, but I'm so happy that I can sort of develop my personal network, taking advantage of this opportunity. Really grateful for being a panel speaker for this event. A little bit of background of myself. I am a parallel entrepreneur, meaning I launch and operate multiple companies simultaneously. And this is becoming a trend in entrepreneurship because, as you all know, that a guy named Elon Musk started this whole trend. So you could, if you want, launch and operate multiple businesses. They may not overlap with each other in the same time. And so that's a fun process. So my primary commitment is small business funding, venture capital, especially early stage investments. I also built a company that develops a ghost kitchen concept, as well as a trust company that offers traditional corporate trustee services to trusted clients, as well as investment management services. So multiple companies. Many of my companies have grown so fast in the last few years. I think in the last 2 years alone, my companies collectively have won a total of 11 fastest growing company awards by either the Inc. magazine or Financial Times. So I'm pretty proud of the achievement we have created. But in the meantime, I'm here to learn more and then hopefully share some of the thoughts with all of you. And this is my dear friend Jen. We actually work together on supporting the startups. So you want to give your
Thank you, everybody. Thanks, John, for the kind words. So my name is Zen, and I currently operate 2 startups. I take that as a curse and also a blessing at some time. One thing I wanted to mention that maybe John didn't also point out earlier is John is also in the businesses and also in the process of creating several incubation and accelerator spaces in Southern California and also in New York. So that to a lot of the, hopefully, audiences today, if you have some great ideas and a great product or project that you're undertaking, that will be a really good opportunity to get access to different investments and get access to different mentors and also and government institutional support to help further grow your companies. Going back to myself, like I said, I'm the co-founder in Cheese. I actually started Technology Credit first as my very first startup after I left Ernst & Young and Goldman Sachs. I spent about 12 years in Ernst & Young and also 2 years in Goldman Sachs in the corporate world. When I started Technology Credit, that was my very first startups, as you would call it. Throughout the processes, I got to know very talented and many young entrepreneurs in the Southern California spaces. And also through these experiences, I met now our Chief and CEO and also one of my co-founder. We decided to join partner to form these businesses in 2019. So from a business standpoint, Cheese offers a very simple debit card services in the United States. The debit card allows you to get high cash rewards as kind of the first benefits for using the debit card, and also eliminates most of the fees, such as overdraft fees or minimum balance fees, and also international domestic wires. On top of that, within 2 weeks of time, we're also going to launch our first so-called line of credit to help international students and also new immigrants in the United States who potentially need to build their credit histories. So that's kind of our roadmap that's currently ongoing for the Cheese debit card. We're also getting into the lending space a little bit on the personal side of it. On the Technology Credit, which is my very first startups, our primary business is to help startups, and especially small businesses, to claim research and development tax credits. I remember my good friend Richard here invited me to this place about 4 years ago, and I had my first pitch, and I won $500 as my first startup. So that's how I got started. So far in the last 3 and 4 years, I actually have helped over 200 small businesses. All of them are venture capital bases, served on many roles in the CFO advisors and financials and controller roles for them. But my kind of niche is helping them to claim R&D tax credit. See some of my clients as well today in the audiences.
All right, thank you both for the introduction. So the first question for both of you. So what's the trend of startups in Southern California in post-pandemic era, and which industries of startup companies are thriving in this period?
I guess I'll take it first. So since I kind of helped over 200 businesses, and I do see a lot of the business kind of come and go from time to time, especially during the pandemic. I think there are at least 2, probably very familiar to most of you sitting down here. One is called the Yummy Buy, and one is Cheese. I just want to kind of bring some relevances. During the pandemic, those 2 type of businesses, they saw significant growth in the pandemic due to, of course, COVID lockdowns. So that was during COVID. However, as the COVID is winding down, we do also see some of their, regardless of the call it volume or transactional dollar amount, start to decrease as well. And that's not just to Yummy Buy or weed during the kind of e-grocery industries. It's also applied to Fantuan, Hungry Panda, all of those. They're trying to spend a significant amount of marketing dollar, not only to acquire new customers, but also to retain existing customers to continue to use your platform and your brands. So from a post-pandemic standpoint, what we see is that for most of the companies who have already demonstrated that they had a product market fit and also are able to capture the users regardless through incentivizing or providing better services, those companies that are mature and stable, it tends to have a easier time in terms of continuing to operate and also continue to attract the fundings in today's venture capital spaces. However, for those companies that, for example, I personally also operated and helped with, they're in deep tech but haven't really demonstrated a so-called product market fit. Those are having a significant hard time, especially if you're trying to raise, over, for example, $5 to $10 million in today's market. VCs are becoming very, very particular in terms of demonstrating how you can grow your product and how you're going to target your market and how you're going to earn your first dollar revenue or continue to demonstrate that your scalability can demonstrate a potential exit, for example, in 5, 7, or even 10 years of time. John, anything you want to comment?
Yeah, I agree. I think, I don't know how much COVID hurts the startup community in the last couple of years. But it seems to me, I think the damage, if there is any, could be very minimal compared to other sectors. So in other words, I think COVID in general didn't hurt the startups that much. And also, I think probably created some unique opportunities for some of the startup ideas to come out. So I think, I almost think, COVID is not such a big factor. But one of the trends, as Jim mentioned earlier, I think is that in the last few years, the accelerator industry was evolving so much, so quick. And now, I think the top accelerator programs are attracting a lot of business growth resources. And for any startups, if you look for capital, if you look for operating resources, if you look for mentorship, if you look for marketing resources, everything almost, you have to kind of join some of those top accelerator programs. And I don't think there's any restrictions as far as how many accelerator programs you can join. I've seen a lot of startups rotating in the different accelerator programs. It's kind of an interesting phenomenon at this point. But I think that's one of the trends that I have seen for the last couple of years. Back to you.
Thank you. And the next question will be specific to John. And Southern California has been an amazing startup ecosystem, and I know you have been promoting it. And so what are the key elements that make the startup ecosystem survive? And also, how could entrepreneurs better leverage the resources in a startup ecosystem?
So when we talk about the innovative ecosystem, we're talking about someone teaching innovation, entrepreneurship. We're talking about experienced mentors providing coaching support to these startups. We're talking about venture capitalists or angel investors providing specific capital resources to these startups. So we're talking about different things. Now, I think the best opportunity for any of the startups, and I think this is the way that this innovative ecosystem should go, is that you somehow need to put all these together and provide a solid program or package that helps all these startups holistically. And this is why about 3 years ago, we started the first accelerator program in the city of Long Beach in a pretty unique three-way partnership. So my company, CESASC Management, brought in the city of Long Beach. So the city government was one of the founders. And also the local university, Cal State Long Beach, as another partner. So this is a unique three-way partnership. We're talking about public-private education, right? So all three partners bring in unique resources to support this accelerator program. And I think this is the future of this accelerator space. And we, at this point, are going full speed, developing the same business model, that, creating a lot more accelerators, not only in Southern California, but nationwide. I think by the end of the year, our goal is to create 6 programs just like that. You want to add something?
Well, I'll add really quick. I think after I have worked for, well, necessarily worked for, but after have helped over about 180 businesses, those are more mature. When they come to me through my technology credit, they have become a much more established businesses, have a product or whatnot. And then now working with John on several early stage, meaning that they might just have some ideas on a piece of napkin and they want to raise fund. What I see significantly is that regardless of what stage you're in, startups continue to need a lot of help in terms of building their products, build their teams and expertise, and that being, for example, whether it be simple as marketing or a product person. There's always so much needs and demand in different industry for those type of individuals. And I think that's where John's Sunstone management team and also, I'm actually so glad to be helping out. At the same time, we're trying to create an ecosystem to provide the necessary mentorship, not just from the monetary standpoint, but after we have put money in it, what does the startup need in terms to be able to success and also get additional funding and also to demonstrate that their product or services have a market position to continue to grow.
Thank you both. And the next question will be for both of you. So you could probably heard the Startup Accelerator Y Combinator recently were the good times for the startups maybe coming to the end and for the venture market. So do you agree with it? And also given that certainly for the US economy, could you please provide some suggestions for entrepreneurs for fundraising?
Okay, so I don't know if we call that bad news, but Y Combinator did announce that the VC investment amount has dropped, I believe, by 60% in the first quarter of this year. So it seems like, at this point, there are, companies who are trying to play a little bit conservative games at this point, and I think it's more because of the big economic background. So we're talking about a big economy starting a sort of economic downturn. By the way, I think officially U.S. economy is already stepping into a downturn. So we are facing a big recession in the next 2 or 3 years. As a matter of fact, I do think the biggest realistic crash since 2008 will happen next month. Just watch news. As soon as the Fed increases another 75 basis points, so you see that. So I think that's the background. That's the reason that a lot of people are not super passionate jumping into sexy investments like venture capital. But that's not the problem. The problem is that if the early stage companies cannot get the initial capital they need, they could lose some unique opportunities to grow their businesses. So we're more concerned about that. So I think what we can do, Jin, I'm sure you agree, is that we could possibly create a model to cover more early stage companies. Hopefully, giving them the best capital resources that they need.
And speaking of giving resources to early stage, this is kind of a sidetracked topic. I actually recently started as an experiment to organize what we call the Startup Lab series, and where I worked out of the Idea Lab, is to train early stage founders that might not even have any experiences to understand when you wanted to build your businesses, what are some of the key requirements? And this is very different from the typical accelerator and incubators. Where we go into it, we only allow at most five to six potential founders to come together and ask their questions. And I leverage my existing experience after working as a co-founder and founder in the startup stage, but also as an experienced individual in a corporate environment to demonstrate them from the inception to growing to a potential exit. This is exactly what you're going to go through at a different stage where you prepare for this. From a mental standpoint, from a technical background standpoint, and also from a funding standpoint, where to get the resources to. But going back to the questions, being as a co-founder in Cheese, of course, and if you guys know what Cheese is, neobank, we were in a very what we call hot industries back in 2019, and therefore at that time I didn't even know how we raised $650,000 with no product, no experiences in that space. And we basically bluffed our way through, several investment rounds and got the first fundings. And when we got our $3 million, the next stage, we still didn't have much to demonstrate. But we were able to ride the hot waves of the fintech at that point to at least launch the product. However, as the kind of the pandemic hits and also the economic downturn started to impact us, we received investors' email almost on a weekly basis telling us, just stay alive, and that's kind of the most critical thing you need to do at this point. And a lot of our investors, they are actually pretty well-known VCs in the Southern California and Northern California space. After talking to them in person, they actually told me that it's not that we don't have the money anymore. It's just that we're not investing anymore because they're afraid that for certain businesses and for certain economies, if you haven't demonstrated from a VC standpoint, for example, that you have a really good tractions, retentions, or potential exit strategies, they just don't think that they want to invest money or continue to put money in it so that they actually can realize their return on investment from their LP standpoint.
If I could add something quick here, as probably most of you already know that, if you look at the growth curve for all these startups, I think in the first 2 or 3 years, that's the toughest time period. All these companies have to fight and survive, and we call that the death valley. So when the economic cycle doesn't do you a favor, and your death valley happens to exactly match the recession downturn, we're talking about the next 2 or 3 years, there's always a big concern from the investor's perspective because it's already hard to survive the next 2 or 3 years. Now, the whole economic environment doesn't help you. Now, how can you survive, right? So that I think that's potentially the mental hurdle for lots of investors. So I think that's the challenge.
Thank you. Thank you both for offering thought-provoking ideas. And the next question will be more relevant to Jen. And we know that Cheese, your startup company, has offices in both China and US. So how can cross-border companies navigate the low tides of China-US relationship?
I think Cheese is in a very unique situation because Cheese is technically a regulated fintech in the United States. Given the China and the US tensions, and especially on data and ownership of data, we actually were instructed by our bank, for example, our sponsor bank, to not open a branch in China where our employees in China will have direct access to the US consumer data. Because Cheese only allows an account holder in the United States open an account that is under the FDIC insurance policies. So when we wanted to cut down our costs and also to provide what we call 24/7 services, we wanted initially to open up a customer service center in China to take advantage, of course, the labor costs and also the ability to speak the language. But because of that tension that's kind of embedded into the two countries, we were not able to do that. So we had to really be strategic and also be resourceful in terms of finding those type of customer services that's in the United States that are also inexpensive and also experiences, but shifting more of our technology resources in China where this is not going to be regulated by the bank, or the bank really doesn't have too much of a say as far as how the technology runs. But going back to the kind of the bigger picture in terms of the policies, same thing with other businesses that I have done, I helped in the past, that are not in the fintech, but in, let's say, media or entertainment industries. They're continuing to get regulated by the Chinese government in terms of what you can do if you're a U.S. businesses versus if the founders do the same, but incorporate what we call local traditional domestic businesses. They tend to have a much better or much better opportunities to be able to do what they want to do in China. John, you have any?
One of my companies, American Lending Center, does have a sort of an overseas operation. We have offices in Beijing, Taipei, and Hong Kong. You're right. It's extremely tough to maintain the operation overseas when your business is defined or perceived as a U.S.-based business. But in the meantime, I think we're being patient. I think the U.S.-China relationship will come back. It just is a matter of time.
Thank you both. And the next question is also for both of you. It's a more general question. So, do you have any suggestions for individual investors?
Okay, for individual investors, I think for individual investor, I think based on my understanding, what they're looking for in today's economy, they are looking for something that is viable in terms of product, and also something that has already had some attractions for investors. But I don't think I'm qualified technically to give investors advice or opinion, but if any investor were to look for a really good product and project, I think maybe going through, for example, the accelerator spaces and also going through incubation spaces might be a preferred route just to test out the water, for example, to demonstrate that if the businesses would be able to, for example, realize what they said 3 months ago in terms of what they wanted to do, marketing, product standpoint. To me, the reason I say this is because I personally don't value that if my business raised $10 million, $20 million, or $50 million as a metric for success. The way I really look at it is if our business can actually demonstrate the product market fit, serve the existing unique customers within a small segment, and then continue to expand and improve on that. And that to me is much, much more valuable to me instead of just saying, hey, we're able to raise $10 or $20 million.
My short suggestion to my investors is that be brief but patient. When the difficult time comes, I think you need to be a little bit more greedy. you have to be a little bit more wild to be able to catch the best opportunity in that the whole economic cycle. So not too bad, but you got to be strong. But in the meantime, you have to be super patient.
Thank you both. And the next question is for John. And what are the key elements for you to decide which company to invest in?
Well, the most important, I think, probably most of you will agree, is that you have to look at the founder. You have to look at the business owner. So there's a famous saying in the investor community, which is, you're not investing into the horse, but you're investing into the jockey. So in other words, who controls the business probably has the best power to be able to develop this business and grow the business. So we always spend a lot of time looking at the individual human beings running these shows. So that's the most important thing to me.
Yeah. Thank you, John. And the next question is for Jin. And as a serial entrepreneur, what is the biggest challenge that you experience? How do you address it? Just say it again. What is the biggest challenge that you experience, and how do you address it as a serial entrepreneur?
Yeah. For my personally, when I initially started out doing the so-called startup world, my biggest challenge was, of course, finding the money to support. I discovered it wasn't really the money that was lacking. I'll give you a very good example. Technology credits, when I initially come out, met a lot of the friends who are also investors. They looked at my resume and said, great, you got a corporate world, very successful in the corporate world, but I don't know if you're going to be successful in the startup world because that's a two different ballgame. So at that time, they weren't sure about if they wanted to put money into it. But I nevertheless, took the stride and I went on and built my technology credit, especially in 2020. We were able to grow our revenue from $283,000 to $1.2 million without any capital investments. And at that time, it was an interesting dilemma now. Then I reached out to investors, and not really for money, but to tell them that, hey, look at our growth, and look at I have demonstrated how to acquire customers within my segment, and the tricks that I play, or the words that I'm using to say or to convince the startup CEOs to sign up services with me. They came back to me, hey, I'm ready to invest. And I already thought about your Series A, Series B, and Series C rounds already, given where you're in this channel. But I told them, look, I don't really need money right now. I need resources. I need resources to get into, for example, Y Combinator as a mentor. I need resources to get into Skydeck, different accelerators and incubators, so that I can continue to acquire customers. So that to me is more important. So from a founder standpoint, I think the key takeaway that I have experienced in the last 4 years is really focusing on building your businesses. I took fundraising or monetary rewards as a secondary. That it will come once you do the right things.
Thank you, Jim. And also, moving forward, we want to evolve more audience questions. Is there any questions the audience wants to ask the speaker, and we can?
Any questions?
Yes.
I have a question, Mr. Shen. I think in this seminar you keep saying United States will be in downturn will come recession in 2 or 3 years. That's inevitable or just like a possibility. I think if we do something well, we still have a very good possibility to achieve soft landing. That's my question.
Well, we can argue all day long. By the way, this is an interesting topic. There's no certainty. I can tell you if something magic happens, right, in the next few months. But I think the chances that the U.S. economy will be dragged into this new recession period is definitely, like 80-90% chance at this point. But that's just my personal opinion.
All right, well, can take the next one.
My question is to John and Jim. Regarding California, since you need the business development, getting forth, and also a new entrepreneur.
Okay, I agree with you in a sense. I think in the last couple of years, the overall sort of a business growth environment in California has not improved. In a certain way, I think there are new concerns or even threats that jump out to kind of create a new roadblocks for those startups. But in the meantime, I think you should also look at some new resources you could possibly tap into and grab in to support your growth. Let me do a real quick introduction of a new program, and I don't think most of you know that. It's called the SBCI, State Small Business Credit Initiative. I do suggest you to maybe take a quick look. You can search on Google SSBCI California. This is a new program, almost unprecedented. It was authorized by a new act signed by President Biden last year. The name of the act was American Rescue Plan. And this act authorized a total of $10 billion to go to each state so that those states can help disadvantaged small business in their states. And these are, number one, minority-owned small businesses. Number two, small businesses in low-income areas. And number three, small businesses that traditionally have trouble access capital. So what are they? They're startups. So this program is coming, it's on its way. So my company, American Lending Center, has already registered as a lender for this program. And my other company, CESASC Management, is talking to the California Governor's Office to help them allocate the funds as a fund manager. But I believe in the next couple years, this program will give a lot of California small businesses, especially minority-owned startups, tremendous support. So stay tuned.
Thanks. I only have a very small question for John and Jen. What is your average amount of dollars you invested in one startup company? Thanks.
So was the question how much was the average dollar amount invested in the company?
In one company?
In one company. Well, I think, I mean, I can't speak for you, John. I think based on, right. After working with John, for this long, I think, also Jasmine is also here, can speak much better in terms of the investment. But typically, for startups at early stage, we're talking about accelerator and incubators, don't have much traction or have some ideas or have a product that haven't proved yourself. The typical investment is anywhere between, I'll say $80,000 to $150,000, and that's kind of the very early stage. But if you're, if the founder are much more polished, for example, if you're more experienced, you have serial, exit experiences, or even the failure, you learn quite a bit from it. If you got into, for example, in Y Combinator, these days the investment has kind of up to almost at least $500,000 just at the initial stage. And of course, add-ons, that's also depending on your tractions. It could be anywhere between $200,000 to anywhere between $5 to $10 million depending on industry.
Well, the political answer for this is there's no such a rule for under-investment or over-investment. So it all depends. But at a very early stage, if we look at the startups coming into the accelerator programs, we're looking at somewhere between maybe $100,000 and maybe $150,000 as the initial investment.
Thank you. We can take one last question because of time limitation.
Okay, one question for Jen and John. So do you guys think there are certain sectors in which startups are more resilient if the economy is ever getting worse?
I'll say first that from my experiences that all the businesses that I've served, the startups in the software technologies, especially in the SaaS businesses, as of today, they tend to have be able to demonstrate much reliable way or much foreseeable way to sustain themselves without having to face significant, for example, layoff or downturns. This is not to say, for example, Zooms or Facebook, they are laying off. They're typically the larger SaaS company, but at my stage of helping some of the smaller businesses, SaaS companies who are not capital intensive, meaning that they don't have to purchase equipment, they don't have a lot of fixed fees, and they can actually maintain a product with minimum amount of headcount and also technologies. Those tend to be more resilient compared to the other businesses that heavily focus on, for example, deliveries, inventories, or capital intensive equipment. John, your thoughts?
That's fine. I don't have any comments.
All right, thank you. And because of time limitation, we're going to have just one last closing question. So if you can give us one line of advice to our audiences who want to start up a company today, so what would that be?
Okay, so I'll go first. my advice for anybody doing anything is that you always need to look at a long-term goal. Never get confused by short-term opportunities to get rich, to to make money, let's say. So the long-term goals are the easiest ones. Those are the opportunities that probably have the lowest risk and the best chance to achieve. I learned this 12, 13 years ago when I lost all my previous businesses. By the way, I almost committed suicide twice. In the heel of the financial crisis back in 2008, 2009. So what I didn't do very well, and that was the reason that I lost all my businesses back then, was that I always wanted to chase the short-term opportunities. I always wanted to make money quick. I always wanted to make a shortcut to kind of achieve something. But at the end, when you keep doing that, I think the chances are the more short-term goals you have, the easier for you to fail. So I learned that, and I decided to get rid of that, starting the second round of startups, back in 2010, and I think I have really improved my business mentality since then, and this is why I think I'm doing very well with my current businesses.
I guess at the conjunction, if I really want to give some realistic advices today, and before you go, get John's WeChat, okay? So because John's got the money, he's got the mentorship, and got the ecosystem that's already built for you. So that's all.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Yeah, thank you, John, Jen Yu. That was a super inspiring, informative discussion. We really appreciate you taking the time to be here to share your advice and your WeChat with us. So, I guess my takeaway is that you need to have a long-term vision and be brave and patient, and I hope all the entrepreneurs and investors here today will survive and thrive these difficult times. And then our next panel discussion features innovation and entrepreneurship in the healthcare industry. So what are the opportunities and challenges in the post-pandemic era? And what's the current market condition of biotech companies? So next, Ms. Ray Su, the CEO and founder of Nova Access Biotech, and Mr. Aaron Ma, the Director of Clinical Research and Data Science at Cognate Lead, will share with us their perspectives and suggestions for startups in the healthcare industry. Unfortunately, as some of you may saw that originally Dr. Li Ding also planned to come today, but she couldn't be here with us today due to health conditions. But I'm sure Aaron and Alina will give us some great suggestions for companies in the healthcare industries as well. Welcome.
Good afternoon. So for the second panel, me and Lina will talk about some opportunities and challenges in healthcare innovation. And we're going to have more of a kind of chat format so we can address some of the questions everybody care. So the first question, as you can see, the question from the screen. So Lina, starting from you, can you please briefly introduce yourself and your company?
Yes, very glad to having this opportunity to speak here, and very great panel from previous channel. So, hello everyone, my name is Alina Su, and I'm the founder and CEO of Nova Access Biotech. Also, a Harvard Medical School PhD student specifically targeting regenerative bio and specific application in clinical application. So in Nova Access, what we're specifically targeting is needle-free injection that empowers in-home drug delivery. And not only we are having this hardware technology, but also we're having specific software that is able to manage medication for a specific delivery to truly empower everyone is able to have same equal access to healthcare.
Thank you, Alina. And my name is Aaron Ma. I'm the Director of Clinical Research and Data Science at Cognitive Leap. And Cognitive Leap is a digital mental health solutions company focusing on mental health challenges such as ADHD. And we are the pioneers in the area of digital diagnostic and therapeutic system with the aim to empower and extend the capabilities of clinicians and psychologists by providing products that are accessible, affordable, and available to all. And currently our leading product, which is a VR-based diagnostic tool for ADHD, is just finished a clinical trial. Earlier this year, we'll be heading into the FDA applications and medical device. So our mission of the company is trying to help with the community and family to address their mental health challenges. So can we go to the next page? Thank you. And the next question will be, what are the challenges for innovations in the healthcare industry and how do you overcome these challenges? We start with Alina.
Yeah, so this is a very great question because specifically in healthcare, innovation has always been a very hard problem to address because of 2 points. The first one I've recognized is that the accessibility of the healthcare has always been a problem, especially after the pandemic. We have seen that before the pandemic, people are visiting healthcare system like hospital to receive the injections or delivery of the medicine. But after the pandemic, people have to learn it immediately by themselves when they're at home. So that means this accessibility of the healthcare means we have to decentralize this professionalism for specific skills like medication delivery or medication management to give this skill to the patients and let themselves able to treat themselves and deliver the medication to their selves bodies. So this is one of the challenges that we are facing as accessibility of the healthcare. And the second one is that not only accessibility requires decentralization, but also the transparency of the entire healthcare is a problem. We are seeing the pricing of the healthcare is a problem, but also transparency in terms of medication management and also medication adherence rate. What is exactly happening when patients are at home? This is the main question. And this is also a very important question right now. We are seeing the entire healthcare system, insurance company, are spending tons of money from $100,000 to $3 billion in terms of to address the medication adherence problem, to solve the accessibility and also transparency of the healthcare. So these 2 points is the most important point that I've seen to stop innovation from the healthcare. But the challenge also gives us opportunity to innovate. So that means this pandemic actually gives us more gap for us to see what exactly can we do with the technology to develop more specific factors to fill in the gap within the healthcare system and to empower the innovation in the entire system.
Thank you, Alina, for your thoughts on the challenges in healthcare. And I'll be more focused on the mental health part of the healthcare because that's the part a lot of people kind of ignored because we, most times we care about more physical but not mentally. So a lot of mental challenges are happening, but I think the biggest challenge in this mental health world is trying to kind of really know the youth scenario, trying to engage and help with the families, right? Because a lot of times I think the challenge is trying to define a pain point and how do you utilize your technology into this field and trying to engage and really help with those families. I think that's why we have innovations in technology, but I want to emphasize technology is just a platform or a tool, right? It will be a good foundation, but never be the answer of it, right? So we have to really incorporate technology into the traditional knowledge of mental health, psychology, neuroscience to really help us as families So the access into your families and really trying to increase engagement and really help with your solutions using technology is the challenge I see specifically in this mental health field. And can we go to the next question? Yeah, so this is more specifically for Alina. Your company, CESASC Biotech, focuses on new drug delivery, especially needle-free injection medical device platforms. How did you come up with this idea in exploring drug delivery mechanism?
Yeah, so I'd like to address this question in two specific ways. One is because of my personal experience, and another one is the entire economy, the entire environment. So why I started CESASC for needle-free injection is actually because my sister was diagnosed with growth hormone deficiency at age 7, which means we need to inject her with 1,000 times of injection into her belly. So imagine that you need to inject yourself for 1,000 times, and every time of injection, you are going to hospital and then come back home every day for 3 years. That was what I had to do for my sister, and that was what we have suffered for the medication delivery. And right now, the circumstance is we are seeing pandemic is limiting the accessibility of the healthcare by not letting patients to go to hospital, but instead letting them to treat themselves and inject themselves at home by themselves. That means they have to gain the accessibility of the healthcare and ability to inject themselves immediately, almostly. But how are we able to give them that kind of ability to them? That professional knowledge from nurses or doctors, how would that specific patients able to inject themselves immediately? So that is the mission of CESASC Biotech. What we are providing is a specific needle-free injector that everyone, no matter where and what kind of experience or professionalism that you have, but also with a specific management of telling you how you are able to inject yourself with 90 degrees of injection with minimization of the pain, and where should you inject yourself, and how exactly is it going to happen. We are going to give you a signal of when the LED light is turning green, that means you're able to inject yourself. And when that LED light is turning red, that means no, that's not the site, and that's not the right pressure or degree to inject. And moreover, on the software side, it's basically a personal management system for you to tell yourself when, for example, today 10 a.m., I need to inject myself with 0.5 milliliter of insulin or any kind of medication. So that means we are providing our patients with a specific structure of how we are instructing you and providing you the ability to inject yourself very safely, convenient, and also easily. So that is why we have started CESASC Biotech from my personal experience and also from my personal story. But what I have seen in the entire environment is that new drug discovery has been accelerated in past 50 years. There are thousands, 100,000 of new medication that we have discovered in cancer, ADHD, or even ADP. But the same delivery system that we are using is still haven't changed for 100 years, which is needle. But why does that matter? It's because if we still using needle, for example, let's say IVF treatment, in vitro fertilization, that women need to get pregnant with injection of hormone or medication. That means they need to know what kind of medication am I specifically injecting and how much do I need to inject and when. There's 6 kinds of medications with 4 different schedules that requires you to specifically having knowledge to know when and how much to inject yourself. So this is where I'm seeing not only from my personal experience of suffering for injection, but also the entire economy and environment which created this specific opportunity for us to focus on new drug delivery rather than more discovery of the medicine, because we have passed that discovery stage, but more focusing on functionality increase to increase the efficacy of the delivery and efficacy of the function.
Thank you, Alina, for your thought-provoking ideas from both perspectives. Thank you. Can we move to the next question?
Yeah, so this is a very interesting question as well. Aaron, for your company, Cognitive Leap, which is a global digital mental health company that's focusing on mental health and digital solutions. So I also wanted to ask you about how is your standpoint in entire changing of the digital health world?
That's a really good question. I think the very starting point as we created this company is we really see the pain point existing in this health, in this mental health specific industry that we see that everything that we use as a diagnosis solution was kind of from 50 years ago. So everything that we do is from traditional paperwork that you do evaluations, very subjective, from your teachers, from your parents to give the kids a really subjective diagnosis. Right? We really see the pain points that also through this process is really complicated. It can take 10, 15 hours just doing really boring paperwork. So that's how we started the whole idea. We really see the pain point existing and how we can utilize the technology to really innovate and try to revolutionize this whole industry. So that's why we see our mission and vision from that starting point, because we have the mindset that everything should starting from a problem-oriented approach. Right? We see the pain point and how do we incorporate different technology and resources to have a better solution. So that's why we get started with utilizing technology, especially virtual reality, into this field, is trying to have a really refined, objective approach to give a better diagnosis of the mental health problem. So I think that's why I really see that whole approach from a problem-oriented angle, right? So this is how we kind of started everything and trying to, step by step, trying to add technology and different other pieces into these components, trying to address a problem that's already existing. So we really see the digital field in this mental health, and also more generally for the healthcare system being a really good foundation moving forward, and also giving all the pieces that's really needed. And also it is more, in a way to say it's more scalable, because in US and also in China, we have very limited number of healthcare providers, but we have a huge need in terms of all different problems. So there is a big demand and supply gap. So how do we close that gap? I think the best solution is utilizing technology into these different use scenarios and to have more scalable digital solutions to be applied in this field. So that's my personal thinking about this whole industry.
Yeah, absolutely. So in terms of having a problem-solving mind actually resonates with what John just said, having a long-term goal in mind. And I think that's not only is a problem-solving skill, but also how we plan the future.
Thank you. Can we move to the next one? Thank you. So the next question is, how do you see the role preventive approach is playing in healthcare development, and how do you see the advantage preventive approach will bring to the healthcare system from both clinical perspective and health economics perspective?
Yeah, so this is also a very interesting question, because preventive approach, this reminds me traditional Chinese medicine, which is using preventative skill to diagnose how exactly people are behaving according to their functionality and also personal health. But in terms of diagnostic approach, which is Western medicine, I think that's what we are targeting from micro to macro. So in micro, that means specific liquid biopsy or diagnosed with certain cancer and removal of the certain cancer. That means micro. But macro means how your body is transforming, how is your disease stage is evolving. That is the macro. So that is where we are seeing preventive health is actually more based on macro, how your body in a huge performance is evolving in a different stage. So that means I believe Western medicine and traditional Chinese medicine is actually blending together as an entire whole system, not only preventive but also reactive health. After the diagnosis, but also before the diagnosis is even more important. It's because several of the disease, actually most of the disease, every disease, occurs before we are diagnosing it. For example, diabetes. It doesn't matter how much your blood sugar changed. For example, if it's below 30, you will be getting diagnosed with diabetes. But what about 29? What about 31? Does it mean it doesn't care? It already means you have some specific severe risk of getting this kind of disease. But why isn't that important? So that's why we are seeing the entire healthcare system. We are shifting from reactive to a more proactive way of preventing the disease and to manage our healthcare become the right of ourselves, but not only in hospital system by the doctors.
Thank you, Elena. And I couldn't agree with you more on these points of how important preventive approach is playing this whole healthcare system. And I want to address more from the perspective of health economics perspective. I think especially in the US, we have spent a huge amount of money on healthcare. Just looking at the numbers, we spend almost 20% of GDP on healthcare alone, right? And given that we have the whole GDP number is already huge. So if you look at other countries, China or some European countries, their share of GDP, in healthcare is around 5% to 10%. For China, it's about 5%, but for the other countries, it's not even close. Just by the percentage, but if you multiply by the exact GDP and the number, if you look at the differences, it's huge, right? So why this matters? Because there is, I think my personal thinking is in this whole system, there is a huge waste in terms of overdiagnosis and overtreatment. After we find out, okay, you have the disease, right? And for a lot of times, the preventive approach is always ignored in trying to prevent it from happening. So I really see that, for the whole healthcare system to try to get to the right approach, more resources need to be filled into this gap, trying to prevent the disease from happening, and also have some early screening of disease, putting into the standard healthcare system. So it's just from a health economics perspective, there's a huge opportunity for this country to go to the right directions and trying to leverage resources and money into the correct approach. Right? So that's how I see there's a good opportunity for some innovations in this field, so that we can try to utilize some advanced technology, try to help with the early detection of disease. So this is just my personal thinking about the whole healthcare system from a health economics perspective. Can we move to the next one? Thank you. So next questions, in your observations, how has the trend of biotech startups changed in the post-pandemic era, and how is the current market for biotech companies?
Okay, so I've actually summarized the trend in a specific word called PTSD. P means personalized, which means we're not only using a systematic diagnostic system or preventive health, but we're specifically targeting person as age group, ethnics, even we are male or female. We are having different body condition. So personalized means we are diagnosing or preventive healthcare for a specific person rather than a human race as a whole. And this also means for chronic disease, for example, diabetes again. Everybody have a different stage of diabetes. Several of them are having different side effects, like diabetic foot or diabetic peripheral neuropathy. But even we are having the same kind of disease, how do we prevent the progress of the disease, or even how do we able to prevent that kind of disease? That is a personalized problem that we are seeing more and more healthcare systems are evolving on this trend. Okay, so PTSD, what is D? That means decentralized. Right now we are seeing, for example, telehealth. It's basically moving the healthcare system into your home. That when you're in your bed, you're still able to see your doctor via Zoom or via WeChat. So that means decentralized. Not only decentralization in the location that you can see your doctor at your home, but also decentralized in professional skills, which I've mentioned, for example, injection of the medicine, medication delivery, or diagnosis. Even at your home, you're able to diagnose what kind of cancer you have, what kind of genetic disease you have. 23andMe, that's a very fascinating example. Decentralization of the skill. PTSD, S. What is S? Smart. That means we are having a trend that's specifically targeting more automatic system to increase the entire efficacy, and smart medication delivery or smart medical device that empowers us to collect more healthcare specific data and use that data to analyze what exactly is happening when people are at home, or what is exactly happening for the disease transparent stage, and what is happening in the diagnosis system. That is called SMART, that we are using data to empower the entire healthcare to understand more how is the healthcare is changing for professional health, but also for personal health. So PTSD, okay, oh, sorry, second one is the T, so which means translational. What does translational mean? That means we are bridging the bench to bedside, which we are not only publishing papers, but we are using our specific technology skills we have developed in our lab to bring this technology to the patients who are in need at the bedside. So bridging bench to bedside, not only for the technology to develop for publishing for papers, but also saving people's life in terms of application in clinics. That's the most important core that we have seen. And that's why there is so many incubator centers that is going on. As previously said, it's because technology, the scientists, they recognize that we have to translate this technology into something more better and something come to reality and able to save people's life. Right now we know healthcare is where US put most money in, but also is where most people suffer. And how we are able to change that is to empower the translational health. Not only using the discovery for new technology, but empower the technology to change patients' life when they're at hospital, in the bedside. And that is the most important thing for the trend, which I've summarized in PTSD. Personalized, translational, smart, and decentralized. Thank you.
Thank you, Amir. That's a good summary of PTSD. I just want to share the more thoughts from another perspective. As we're entering this post-pandemic era, which also, at the same time, we have a slowdown in US and also the global economy. And also we have John and Jen shared about in the first panel our challenges in this field. You know, in the post-pandemic era was the US economy getting slowed down, and we have some challenges in fundraising financially, and also companies are kind of adjusting to a more remote use scenario. And just under that circumstances, you know, I feel although we have a lot of challenges into a financial, both from a financially and also adjust to a new scenario. But I would want to look at it from a more positive side about the opportunity of this whole industry, because previously when we didn't have the pandemic and also the economy is doing great, right? We have so many companies, so many similar companies competitor in the same field, right? And at that time it's easier for you to get fundings, right? You have, maybe you don't have anything to demonstrate and you don't have any product available, but just with a fancy story, you get your fundings, right? But after, you know, this post-pandemic era and having the economy going down, and I feel it's really a good opportunity for companies to really be solid and having a lot of your competitors just couldn't go through this post-pandemic era, right? So it's really opportunity for you to be getting a solid foundation, having your product built instead of just telling a fancy story but have nothing to deliver. So I think for the good companies, which I mean good here is have some solid, foundation, product, technology to show. It's really a good opportunity. So I really want to, kind of look at it from a positive side. If you do everything solid step by step, you're gonna survive and have a bright future ahead of you. So this is just like my personal stuff from the other angle. I think we have some time for the audience to have their questions. So any questions?
I have a question for Alina. Like, for your company, what's your mission and vision like in 30 years?
Very good question. So our company's goal is to empower healthcare accessibility for every single person. That means healthcare, in terms of a human right, shouldn't be a specific right that is exclusive to those who are rich or who are in different color, shape of the skin. So what we are believing is that healthcare should be a specific right for every single person, that no matter who you are, where you are, and what location is your healthcare standard is, we hope that we can provide an equal healthcare equality for everybody that who are serving for, and for every human population. That is our end goal, and that is why we are specifically targeting medication delivery at the first stage, that everyone, in terms of, no matter you are healthy or unhealthy, you are having the same right to be able to achieve health. Thank you for your question.
And can we have that next question?
Sure. First of all, I appreciate this panel discussion, and I learned a lot from both of you. I think the biggest barrier for any investors to be able to, understand what the healthcare business does and, potentially see the success path is that they just don't have the T's. They don't have the PhDs. They don't have the knowledge. So what do you think you can do as a healthcare business owner or founder? When you pitch in front of investors, what can you do to help them quickly understand what you do and build the confidence to invest into your company?
So in terms of every business, the core of the business is same, no matter what kind of industry we are in. Because the core of the business is that we are creating value for our customer. And no matter if we're in healthcare, or in CPU, or in chip industry, that's still the same. We are using our knowledge of specialties, like professional knowledge, to address the problem. And is that problem a true problem to solve? Is that problem solving truly creates a value? That is the point that investors should be really understanding, but not how we are able to solve that problem. That creates and generates revenue and also value that create for the patients, for a hospital, for a healthcare industry, insurance company. No matter who, the most important thing is to understand the market. Because hearing the voice of the market is the most important thing that we have seen. No matter if we're in healthcare or not, or in MBA players industry, or in physical health industry, that is the same mission and goal for every business that we have been seeing in the pattern.
Just a short comments. I definitely agree with you. I have a very similar thoughts with your perspectives, Alina. And I think, as I described in the very beginning, we look at the use scenario, we look at the pain points, right? How do we utilize the technology to solve the problem? I think that's the key. And to me, technology is a foundation or a platform, but never the answer, right? We should, cut into the really direct problem, what's the pinpoint, and how do we utilize those technologies to solve it. So that's just my personal thinking of, for all the industries, not only healthcare, we should be more focused on those core values. Thank you. Yes.
I have a question. First of all, I see this Suyo's voice as beauty as the Taiwan famous singer, Su Wei. So my question is to Mr. Ma. You mentioned the U.S. as a healthcare industry spending is like 20% of GDP. I'm not remembering wrong, for fiscal year 2020, it's almost 21 or 22. Compared to the other Europe countries, even China, you need like less than 10%. But why, from this comparative period, it looks like the healthcare system is not even as efficient as other countries, like even China, compared to China, or some other Europe countries. They have a lot of space to improve this efficiency of United health industry. That's my question.
Thank you for the question. I think that's a great question, and also covers a lot of expertise. And I'm not an expert in health economics, but just want to offer based on my limited knowledge. You said about numbers. That's absolutely correct. If you look at the gap or the differences in terms of percentage of U.S. spending on healthcare comparing to European countries or even China, and just from percentage-wise, is a huge gap, right? But if you multiply by the exact GDP, it's even larger, right? So I see that's really complex reasons of why it's happening. Just look at how complicated the U.S. healthcare system, right? You have the doctors, health providers, you have the payers, right? And those are playing different roles, and everybody, you have this really complicated system. And what I talked about earlier is about the problem of over-diagnosis and over-treatment because somebody else is paying for it, right? These are the existing ones, but of course there are more is happening. And also, when we look at, we call it an iron triangle in this healthcare system, which is the access, cost, and quality of healthcare. We have a huge amount of problems in all three of them, right? We have a really high cost, and for a lot of them, for most of the cases, it's not really accessible, and the quality is not, if you compare the quality to maybe European countries, there's a gap. So I don't think there's just one point or just like one problem is happening. It's just like a mix of problem happening in this very complicated system. But this is just how I see, just from my limited knowledge. I don't know you have some thoughts.
Yeah, the different economic in healthcare is basically the different players who are in the healthcare. For example, in US, there is a different system of who is paying. Is it the insurance company? Is it the payers, which is the consumer? Or is it the doctors for the hospital? Or is it pharmaceutical companies who are developing the drug? So that economic model for every single country is different. And that is belong to medication economy and also in terms of public health. Because that is the structure of the government, how they define who will be the payer. And that will shape the economy of the entire healthcare, that who is going to pay and where does that pay come from. For example, for same medication, in Europe and in US or in China, the price of the medicine is different. Why? Because the payer is different. The pharmaceutical companies everywhere in the world, they know US is the most profitable country to sell their medicine because they can sell as high as they want. There is always being somebody who is able to pay. But in China, that's not the case because government is paying for that. And government will release that cost as low as possible to reduce the cost. That's why the entire payment system is off, and that's where the entire healthcare is so hard to change because the economic model is there for so many centuries.
Thank you. And just because of time limitation, we have to stop now, and thank you for all the interesting questions. Thank you, Lina.
Thank you, everyone.
Thank you, Lina and Aaron. I think I learned learn a lot. I think it's not only helpful for entrepreneurs in the healthcare industry, but for every one of us who are, in this healthcare system. And thank you for sharing your knowledge and insights with us. I really look forward to more PTSD in the healthcare industry, personalized, smart, translational, and decentralized system. So thank you. And now we're going to take a 15 minutes break, and we'll come back at 3:15. So I think it will be a great opportunity for you to network with each other and agree chat of each other. Oh, and very most important, I think, all the panelists, please come to stage and let's take a photo together. And then we'll have a break, and everyone be sure to be back at 3:15 because we'll have 3 excellent speakers for our technical symposium at 3:15. Thank you. We'll see you soon.